members of the board that are not on the subcommittee, you're very welcome to listen in, but you're under our understanding of the city rules on the Brown Act. You're not supposed to contribute any information to the meeting. You're supposed to save that for when the motions come to the full board.
A point of order, Roy, actually, we got a reading from the city that said that unless there's an issue with the quorum for the full board being present here, that in fact, board members can participate in committee meetings. We got a very direct official statement on that.
That's a change. That's a change from what I was seeing in the emails. Tom, could you help?
Well, we got excuse me, I just want to say this was put to the board as a supporting document months ago at a regular board meeting, and it was a direct statement from the city. We changed our procedures to align with it.
Yes, that's correct. So what we need to do, Roy, we need to have a count of Uptown Planners people present tonight, and as long as it's not more than 8 people, then we're okay on that.
Oh, okay. This must have happened at that meeting that I was not at, because I do not recall it. I do recall being scolded for letting somebody talk under the other circumstances. So that's why I wasn't sure. So I think, let's see who's not, let's see. I'm here, Gail's here. Is Matt Maduris? I haven't seen him yet. Blair's here. Mary's here. Tom's here, Lou's here, and Matt's here. So we do have one person who has not shown up yet, but he also tends to join a little bit late, and that's one of the reasons we start later. So I guess, well, by the time we get to public comment,
Helen is here.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, Helen is here.
Yes. And if we don't have another member of the committee join, then you will be able to participate in the comments. But if Matt does show up, then I think we're at our limit, right?
That's right. We would be at 8 people. That would be our limit.
Okay. So we'll deal with that as we go forward. I don't think we'll be getting comments until we get into presentations, etc. All right, we've done introductions. I will call the meeting to order retroactively, and we'll skip the introductions that have already been done. And I will turn it over to Shannon to present our first set of items.
Well, thank you all. Good evening. Happy New Year. It's been a few months since we've seen each other, so I'm very excited for today's presentation. I also hope that all of you and your loved ones are healthy and happy during this time. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Shannon Mulderig, and I'm a senior planner with the planning department and the project manager for the Hillcrest Focused Plan Amendment. Tonight's presentation is on land use and building form, which is a part 2 to the topic, since we will be building off of the discussion from the October presentation last year. And presenting with me tonight is Claudia Brizuela, Senior Traffic Engineer with the city, and Gabriela Folino and Diego Velasco, who are with our consultant team. Some housekeeping for tonight. The chat function will only be enabled during the public comment and discussion portion of tonight's meeting for all of you to share your thoughts or ask questions. When we do get to the discussion portion, please use the raise hand function, if possible, to let us know you would like to speak. And this presentation is available at planhillcrest.org right now under the Meetings and Updates tab. If you wish to have the PDF open so you can view it on your screen and follow along, or you can reference it in the future. I do see, I'm so sorry, I see that there's some people in the waiting room. Gabriela, do you have the ability to let people from the waiting room in?
Yes, sorry, they're admitted right now.
Okay, perfect. Just don't want to make sure, I don't want to leave anyone out. All right, so And then also just a reminder, we are recording this meeting tonight, and then that recording as well as the chat log will be uploaded to the website after the meeting. And here is tonight's agenda. We have a lot planned, so we'll need to make sure we stay on track with time. I will begin with a recap of some background information and what we covered in our presentation and discussion from October of last year, since it has been a few months and we could all use a refresher. I'll then pass it over to Claudia, who will cover mobility options that we're considering for Washington Street. Then Diego and I will present on building typologies and land use concepts. We'll take a break to take any questions and to gather your feedback on the mobility options and the land use scenarios. And then we'll want to save about 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the meeting because we do want to preview our draft online community engagement platform with you all and leave some time at the end for questions and more feedback. So this is a review of the policy framework behind the Hillcrest Focused Plan Amendment that you have seen many times. As we undertake any change or update to a community plan, we do so under the framework of the city's general plan and climate action plan. And the Hillcrest Focused Plan Amendment will help accomplish the strategies outlined in both of these documents by increasing transit-oriented development to increase walking, biking, and transit use within Hillcrest and San Diego region. And the last document listed here, you all know it, the Uptown Community Plan, because the Hillcrest Focus Plan Amendment aims to amend the community plan. And to recap some points that we've covered before, we can see that the population has grown 4 times faster in Uptown compared to the city as a whole, and housing growth has not kept pace with the population growth. And through analyzing commute data, we see there is a huge opportunity to reduce vehicle miles traveled in the San Diego region by increasing housing and transit access in Hillcrest, since many work within the community, yet very few work and live in the community. And so Plan Hillcrest aims to accomplish these 5 objectives: to celebrate the legacy of the LGBTQ+ community, to strengthen connections, to create public spaces and parks, to support local businesses, and to address housing needs. And this last objective regarding addressing housing needs, and specifically to do so near transit, is very applicable to tonight's topic. If you haven't done so already, I highly recommend everyone watch the Mayor's State of the City from last week. For those of you that did tune in, you would have noticed that adding more housing in climate-friendly places that make sense within the city is a top priority for the mayor. So it's our job as planning department staff to implement the mayor's vision and our department's policies and initiatives. And I'm so grateful for the other city staff on the Plan Hillcrest team, as well as our consultants, specifically Gabriella and Diego, who are here presenting with us tonight, who we really rely on for their technical expertise to help us visualize and realize our department's vision. So in our last meeting in October, this was our first attempt at implementing this vision through land use and building typologies. We presented these 3 colorful maps that illustrate different draft land use scenarios that were tied to 3 building typologies: the compact infill, the podium mid-rise, and the high-rise. And tonight we will go through our next iteration of these land use scenarios, which have changed. But to review the ones from October, the first option focused taller buildings and more intensity in the core of Hillcrest. The second option expands taller buildings into Hillcrest East along University Avenue. And the third option is more of a double district approach with taller buildings along all major corridors, including Washington Street, the Park Boulevard Bus Rapid Transit Corridor, and around Normal Street, the future location of the Normal Street Promenade. And the feedback we received from the committee and the public in our last meeting was a preference for draft scenarios 2 and 3. And we also discussed the trade-offs that taller buildings present, which draft scenario 3 from the last slide provides the most opportunity for. Supplemental development regulations, which could be required through a community plan implementation zone, which we often just refer to as CPAWS, could allow for taller buildings that take up less of the ground floor and that present opportunities to add pocket parks, corner plazas, paseos, courtyards, wider sidewalks, and double rows of street trees. And amending the community plan implementation overzone will be more of a discussion topic in the future, as we see this as a way to encourage and even require good design aspects we want to see in new development. We have talked about these tower controls in the past, like step backs, activation on the ground floor, building materials, and more. We also have to consider what different building types mean for reaching our housing needs, supporting local businesses, and increasing transit-oriented development to support current and future transit and to make more walkable and bikeable neighborhoods. And here's some additional feedback we heard in October that I'd like to highlight. We heard a lot of support for increasing open space, urban greening, and wider sidewalks. A lot of support for more housing since we are in a housing crisis, and the need for affordable housing and inclusionary housing policies. There was also feedback about how towers or tall buildings don't need to harm a neighborhood when good design is encouraged or even required. And this, ties back to the community plan implementation overlay zone and supplemental development regulations that we could include as part of this planning effort. Moving on to mobility, we heard support for how we should be prioritizing housing on transit corridors, specifically Park Boulevard near the bus rapid transit station and along University Avenue, and support for a live, work, and play neighborhood. And as for climate, there was support for making land use decisions that help implement our climate action goals. So in October, we discussed the east portion of the community on the eastern side of the 163. And tonight we will be focusing on the medical complex subarea, which is the section in the black box west of the 163 and north of Washington Street. In our next meeting in February, we will discuss Hillcrest West, so the portion that is south of Washington Street and west of the 163. But a feature that I want to point out about the sub-area is, of course, the presence of the two large medical campuses, the Ucsd Medical Complex and Scripps Mercy Hospital, which both have proposed upgrades in the works. The Ucsd Hillcrest campus is in the process of implementing their long-range development plan to create a modern mixed-use health campus, proposing multifamily housing on site and improving mobility access connecting to Hillcrest. And the Scripps Mercy San Diego master plan proposes to build up to a 12-story new hospital and renovated offices on their campus. So I'll now pass it over to Claudia, who will be discussing mobility options for Washington Street.
Thank you, Shannon. Connecting people to businesses, services, and places to recreate is essentially the main role of the transportation system. Finding ways to make it easier to move around and get to those destinations increases access and will improve the quality of life for everyone. It's important to understand what's planned for the region in order to see what each community will benefit from. On this slide, we've zoomed into the Hillcrest community. Sandex Regional Transportation Plan, which was recently adopted, identifies many types of transit services for this community. In dark blue is the planned commuter rail that is anticipated to operate as high-speed type of transit, providing quick travel to many of the region's major destinations. The commuter rail will connect Hillcrest to several areas in the county, including downtown, South Bay communities of Chula Vista and National City, SDSU, La Mesa and East County, as well as employment areas in University City, Sorrento Mesa, Encinitas, Carlsbad, and Oceanside. Light rail transit is also planned in the Regional Transportation Plan, operating as a circulator between downtown, Hillcrest, University Heights, North and South Park, and Golden Hill. And that can be seen in pink on this map. And lastly, a series of bus rapid transit lines will operate at 10-minute frequencies or less, providing access to Ocean Beach, Mission Valley, Kearney Mesa, Mid-City, and La Mesa. So there's a lot of places, there's a lot of destinations and access throughout the region for this community that's planned in the current transportation plan. Next slide, please. In the past, we've presented on different alternatives for University Avenue and Robinson Avenue. But today we'd like to focus on Washington Street and share two concepts we put together for this roadway. So today Washington Street has 4 vehicular lanes shared by cars, buses, and bikes with a raised center median, sidewalks along both sides, and parking on both sides. In the medical complex sub-area, and in particular along Washington Street, vehicle lanes are important because of all the hospitals that are clustered in this area and the need for ambulances and emergency vehicles to quickly access the hospitals. Next slide. We put together 2 alternatives for Washington Street, both maintaining 4 travel lanes along Washington Street. Option 1, seen above on the top, prioritizes transit by providing a dedicated bus lane on the north side of Washington Avenue for the planned rapid bus route, as well as would also serve the local bus routes that are currently operating along Washington Street. Since the planned bus rapid transit is anticipated to operate in a counterclockwise function along University Avenue, traveling west up 5th, then west along Washington, and then returning back along Washington Avenue through Albatross. Because of this circular transit route, we've left parking for the fronting businesses along the south side, which could serve the general area. And the second option would prioritize cyclists, and it would again maintain 4 travel lanes, the raised median, and would repurpose parking along the corridor for a cycle track bicycle facility. A cycle track is a bikeway that is separated from motorists both vertically and horizontally and provides a more comfortable facility by reducing conflicts between motorists and cyclists. With this alternative, existing and future bus service will continue to use the travel lanes, sharing the lanes with vehicles. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you, Claudia. So we're going to move into a discussion on the draft land use scenarios that go hand in hand with the mobility options for Washington Street that Claudia just covered. But I just want to remind you all, we will take a break after this land use discussion so we can take any of your questions and hear from you all, because I know this is a lot of information, but hang in there with us. So we thought it would be helpful to preface our conversation on land use scenarios by illustrating what the colors on the maps mean and what kind of development we're thinking about. There's a lot of overlap with the typologies we presented in October, but the colors have changed a bit and the typologies have been refined as well to suit the medical complex sub-area. Diego, would you like to walk us through the 3 typologies? Sure.
As Shannon mentioned, it is helpful to think about how development typically, particularly housing and mixed use, follows certain typologies that are based on what we're seeing in the construction industry. So the first one that we're looking at today is what we're calling the Podium Mid-Rise. This is really what you could do with conventional wood frame to a max of 5 stories. Sometimes you'll see if it's not a mixed-use building, you'll see 4 stories of wood frame. With mixed-use buildings, you might see up to 5 where the first floor is concrete and has some retail component, and then there's 4 floors of wood above that. The examples that we're showing here on the left is just a little sketch just to show that conceptually. And on the right is actually a recent project that was built in the Focused Plan Amendment area. And we're talking about up to five stories. Looking at anywhere from a floor area ratio of anywhere from 3 to 4. And really it depends on with the size of the units, how many units you might be able to yield with this. But what we are seeing typically with wood frame, conventional wood frame, is the 4 to 5 story. The second option is one that we had not presented before, which is something we're beginning to see more of in the city and in the Focused Plan Amendment area. This is really kind of what the max of what you could do with wood frame, not conventional wood frame, but with wood frame. You can go up to 7 stories where you have 5 stories of the wood above 2 levels of concrete. Again, some those levels might be on the ground floor, might accommodate retail space. But in some areas, it can also accommodate the residential. And depending on the unit size, in this area, you can get anywhere from a floor area ratio of 4 to maybe as much as 5. And as I mentioned, up to 7 stories. The image on the right here is a building that's just outside the Focused Plan Amendment area that we've seen. There's a few others that are being built that are kind of hitting this typology today. And then, of course, the last typology to think about, or the third, is the high-rise typology. This is really where you change in construction from wood frame, conventional wood frame, or modified wood frame to steel or concrete. And so in this case, we might be looking at a bit larger sites with anywhere from 12 to 20 floors of a tower there, and a floor area ratio of anywhere from 5 to 7. And again, here's just a conceptual sketch showing how that could look, as well as a couple of examples.
So now we can link these typologies to the colors on the map to evaluate 3 different land use scenarios. And keep in mind as I'm going through these that the end result could be a 4th option that is a hybrid of these scenarios or a new option altogether. But we felt these 3 were a good starting point for a discussion for this medical complex subarea. So the first draft scenario focuses more intensity along the Washington Street corridor where the rapid bus line is proposed. So this option proposes the dark brown, which represents the Podium Mid-Rise up to 7 levels along Washington Street west of 4th Avenue, emphasizing the transit corridor. And then the light brown, which represents the Podium Mid-Rise up to 5 levels up in the northern area. And then high rise in the purple near the core, east of 4th Avenue, and sort of in that sandwiched area between the 163 and Scripps Health Hospital, where we already see tall buildings on the medical campus as well as in the core, like Village Hillcrest.
So what Shannon asked for me to do is to show a visual of what that might look like. So this is looking east on Washington Street along Washington Street at Brant. Some of you may be familiar with this area. It's right around where the Lazy Acres and the Vaughns are. Looking east, you can see a little bit of the Village at Hillcrest at the very, very back. So really building that corridor with 5 to 7 stories, possibly allowing us to create wide and non-contiguous sidewalks, which then make walk-up residential viable, as well as corner plazas, which support corner retail. And then looking at upper story step backs, something that I think Shannon had mentioned could be considered as part of a supplemental development standards. So this is just a conceptual sketch, not a development proposal. It's just to give you a sense of what that scenario could look like?
And so here's our second draft scenario, which focuses more intensity up north along the 4th Avenue transit corridor. The rapid bus line is proposed to go up 4th Avenue, connecting to Mission Valley. And since the medical campuses are proposing to redevelop this area, we're already starting to see a transition to more mixed use and higher density residential, and reinforcing 4th Avenue as a transit corridor through this dark brown, which again represents the Podium Mid-Rise up to 7 levels, can help link the two campuses. Also, bringing more housing near the jobs that the medical campuses provide can help us achieve a better housing to jobs balance that, as previously mentioned, currently is very imbalanced. I'll also mention that although a bus stop is not currently proposed on 4th Avenue, adding more potential riders along this corridor could be a justification to add a bus stop on 4th Avenue. And this option, like the last, also includes high-rise buildings shown in purple near the core east of 4th Avenue.
So what could that look like? We're looking now on 4th Avenue South along where Arbor Drive is. I'll point out there is a project under construction. Some of you may be familiar, right at the corner of Arbor and 4th, where Shannon is highlighting. So really beginning to build upon this notion of a transit corridor with the mixed use housing. Again, looking at opportunities to widen those non-contiguous sidewalks or create opportunities for non-contiguous sidewalks. Also looking at corners and the potential to accentuate those corners, maybe with a little bit of neighborhood serving corner retail, as well as walk-up residential. This area it turns into a very residential area, so supporting that, as well as the corner retail, as I mentioned. So this is a view. You can see in the background the Scripps campus in the village at Hillcrest, some of those towers, and then the potential for more towers there associated with the core, as Shannon had mentioned.
And so moving into our last draft scenario, this one is sort of an in-between of the first two options and focuses intensity near the core and enforces this idea of a gateway and the sense of arrival when entering into Hillcrest from the 163. So the dark brown, once again representing up to 7 levels, is proposed in between 1st and 4th up to Lewis. And we stopped it at Lewis because the parcels here are a bit larger and could accommodate more height. This option focuses more intensity near the core where there are more commercial businesses concentrated. And we already see, once again, taller buildings with Scripps Mercy Hospital and Village Hillcrest. So this option proposes the lighter brown down Washington Street east of 1st, and like the other 3 options, proposes the high rise in purple near the core and the Scripps Mercy campus east of 4th.
Yeah, I think the one thing we wanted to point out is, or for discussion, is along Washington Street, some of the differences on the side that is west of 1st Avenue versus the side that is east of 1st Avenue. As you start to head east towards Scripps Health, you really get a different sense of the street there. It might be more associated with the core. So what could that look like? This is a view looking west along Washington Street, right about where 8th Avenue is, where that off-ramp from the 163 is. This is a real gateway area. So how do we build upon that and strengthen this sense of gateway through the core? There are already some gateway buildings that are prominent, the ones associated with the Scripps campus, the village at Hillcrest and the Scripps high-rise building there. So really thinking about taller buildings as gateway defining for the area, and looking, of course, at options to support roofline variation, corner retail again, and just building a sense of arrival and a sense of having arrived at the core of the planned area.
Yeah, and we see that we get that sense of arrival with this Crest Urban Apartments that's here on the corner on 8th Avenue today, and we could further build on this this gateway feeling. So there are our 3 draft scenarios, and we can take a break now. We would be happy to answer any questions and would love to hear from you all on what you think about both the mobility options for Washington Street that Claudia covered, and how you feel and what pros and cons there are to the 3 different draft scenarios. And we'd like to hear about what trade-offs we should consider, or possibly ideas for supplemental development regulations we could consider as well. So Roy, I'll let you handle.
Yeah, so as our normal procedure is, we will let non-board members speak first. The reason we do that is because board members are supposed to represent the whole community. So you're supposed to be listening to what these non-board members say and reflect that in your views as well. So before we do that, I just want to get clarification. Previously, you had the light rail going down 6th Street. In this diagram, you have it going down 5th Street. Did you want to say what it is?
The diagram that, hi, this is Claudia Brizuela. The diagram that we're showing is what is currently adopted in the regional transportation plan. We've been in communication with Sandex and they've identified it. They have it essentially as a line on a map on 5th Avenue. We've been in discussions with them and find that 6th Avenue is more appropriate since there's more space due to the recent construction of the protected bicycle facilities. And so that's something that they said could possibly be handled in the next iteration of the regional transportation plan. These regional transportation plans get updated every 4 years.
All right, thanks for that clarification. Okay, let's go with general public comment.
Hello.
Bill Ellig, you were first.
Hi, my name is Bill Ellig. I'm a former Uptown planner. This is more of an organizational question for you, Shannon. I see the work along Washington and going from Washington and probably 4th or 5th all the way up to El Cajon and Park. There's going to be both heavy rail, light rail, rapid bus going up Park Boulevard. Are you going to be in the future? And if so, when will you be presenting on the Washington Street to the east of your area of discussion tonight? Basically Washington from 5th or the 163 up to Park Boulevard.
Yeah, so we covered a more in-depth mobility presentation last year, and I cannot recall if we went into detail on Washington Street there, but we do have a proposed plan or options, I should say, for that section of Washington. Claudia, do you recall from, I know it's been months ago now.
Let's not get too sidetracked. Let's get comments and you guys can prepare your remarks.
Good plan, Roy. Thank you.
Sanjay, you're next.
Hi, I'm Sanjay Stone. Thank you for having me. I'm a Mission Hills resident that live very close to this area, just west on West University. I would like to say that I think transit, making sure that the buses on Washington Street are able to get around, especially with the amount of traffic that would be added, is important. So I think the focus should definitely be on buses. I would also say that I think parking on Washington is probably not, with the amount of traffic that we're having, is probably not ideal. We probably should look at other places to put parking, and maybe use that parking for another bike lane or for an additional bus transit lane in the counterflow direction. And then the last thing I'd like to say is I really like the draft 1 of the Washington Street corridor because it focuses on putting housing and a lot of people on Washington Street and on University, where right now we have a lot of transient people. This having a lot of people in the area, I think, will help make the area more lively and vibrant, and then keep kind of the area looking nice so it will be safer to walk at night. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Sanjay. Oscar, you're next.
Thank you for the presentation. I think you guys always did a great job with the visualizations. I think getting an idea of what buildings are probable to be built kind of gives a good outlook and hopefully encourages the people not to be so opposed to it. For this specific scenario or this part of the neighborhood, I really like anywhere from scenario 2 or 3. I think that density is important, especially with the Ucsd renovation that's going on. So if we can get as much people living close to where they're working, or even opportunities to have hotels for people that are visiting anybody else in the hospital, I think makes a great opportunity. I think to Sandra's point, as far as parking on Washington, I echo that comment. I don't think it really makes that much sense. And kind of looking at both ideas of creating Washington as a path and then University as another one, whether one's safer for biking or the other one, I think I leave it up to you guys to think which one's safest.
All right, thanks, Oscar. Michael.
Is that me, Michael Welch?
Yeah.
Yeah, some questions. Thank you for a great presentation.
Oh, I'm sorry, the other, you're late. Hold on, Michael. The other Michael, Donovan.
All right.
Okay. I wasn't sure. Thank you. On the mobility corridor along Washington, I think I like a hybrid of the two that you proposed, where you have a dedicated bus lane closest to the hospital and a two-way bike route on the other side of the street, so that we can support traffic both ways. And I agree that parking makes little sense there. There's plenty of opportunity to move parking off street. As far as the scenarios, I'm going to have to agree with Oscar. Numbers 2 and 3 make the most sense. Really like the idea of focusing density nearest to the hospital and to the 163 corridor, and leaving Mission Hills to be a little different feeling as it has today. That's it. Thanks.
All right, Sharon, you're up. You're on mute.
Right, unmute. Okay, on some scenarios, I like number 3. I like the idea of having larger lots, more concentrated. You could do more things with it, make things more, buildings that are more appropriate. I also like draft 1, but my favorite's 3. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Patty.
Hi, thank you. Actually, I'm going to ask some questions if that's appropriate.
You can ask questions, but we won't answer them until the end.
Okay, that's great. What I want to understand is, with both UCSD and Scripps, what is their estimation in terms of people that'll be employed, that will need to be living in the area? So that would probably help me to better understand the population and the placement of buildings and construction and all that. And also looking at demographics. Are we talking about singles? Are we talking about families? I think all of that has to factor in when we start looking at the construction of buildings, because you kind of want to look at, do you need more parks? Do you need more infrastructure to support that community? One of the things that comes to mind is when we start looking at the size of the the buildings that we're looking at currently, I immediately start thinking about, like, I live in Mission Hills, as you know, Vaughn's and Lazy Acres. We have to think about what retail outlets can support the additional population, because that's already a factor. I just drove around Lazy Acres for about 15 minutes this evening trying to find a parking spot. So those are the kind of things that we have to realize is going to impact that community. So before we build, I think we should ask those questions and kind of figure out what we need to accommodate that population. And on an added note, my husband's a veterinarian on Washington Street, and I can guarantee you that they need parking, and parking one is their biggest problems, whether it's street or their lot. So you have to keep thinking about how do we support the retail businesses as well as support a new population. So I don't know how that, if all those questions had already been asked, or I'm behind the scenes, don't have all the information, but I definitely would like to get more information before I could actually support any of them at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul, you're next.
Yeah, I wanted to second the earlier comments from what Michael and Sanjay and earlier folks. These are great proposals, and I wanted to talk about the mix of retail and residential. If we get some more buildings, then you would have more support for retail at the base level of those. So wouldn't necessarily have to be driving around a parking lot for Lazy Acres. There would be other stores and supermarkets. And then I get the point about the on-street parking, but we have to balance that against the need for housing. And if your business model is that you require the city to provide you with free or discounted parking on the street, and that's more important than providing housing for others, I just can't get behind that. I think we have to consider all of the factors, and especially the goals of the mayor and what was talked about earlier. So the last thing I want to say is the transit priority slide versus bicyclist priority slide. In both of those, or it was the same slide but two different diagrams, in both of those renderings, 5 of the lanes are still devoted to vehicles that look like, either to parking or moving vehicles. So I know what you're going for there. It's great that you're trying to accommodate other transit modes, but let's be honest, both of those diagrams, cars and moving and parking cars were still the priority in both of those diagrams. So these are great. This is a great start. I'm excited for options 2 and 3 in particular that you're showing right now. And thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Michael Welsh, are you still wanting to talk?
Yes, I just have a question. Thank you. What you haven't mentioned of the different options, have you done the numbers, and do we know the differences in the density and the numbers of that would be generated from the different options in terms of the increase in the population? Do we have those numbers and estimates?
Okay, they'll note your question. Again, all the questions will be answered at the end. Chuck.
Thank you. I'm sorry I missed the beginning of the presentation. I have a question or a comment regarding the street widths and the 3 scenarios. Has a study been done of shade and shadow? Even though that Washington Street and University run east to west, there is 4th, 5th, 6th, etc. And in the scenarios with the dark brown and a light brown, I'm curious how much sun and shade may fall on the street, because that is an effect that should be looked at. I'm curious about the Pernicanos site, because it fits in the, I believe, the dark brown section now, and I don't know what's happening with that. And also the low-rise one-story library building also falls along Washington Street. So I'm curious how that property plays into the 3 different scenarios. And the last is really just a comment. I know that there is some controversy over the use of the word gateway from a previous, many years ago, a development that was called the Gateway Project. So perhaps there's another word for gateway. Thank you.
Thanks. Carol, you're next. You got to unmute.
Sorry. How are they going to guarantee affordability of the units? And next, on the charts showing number of units, parking spaces, there's no set category for open space. So where are the parks going to be located? Uptown already has a deficit of 90 acres in open space and parks. Where are they going to put those? And then I don't know if this is important at this point or not, but they're showing the commuter rail line going straight west on University Avenue. University Avenue jogs and it goes up another block. Currently, they're showing it going through Florence Canyon on University Place. So this may be just a little glitch in their drawing, but I just thought I'd point it out. So.
All right, thank you. I do not, are there any other members of the public that wanted to speak? Shannon, do you have any comments you'd like to respond to before we go to the board comments?
Yes, there was a lot said. Thank you all for your feedback. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes here to see what I can. So Patty had a question about if UCSD and Scripps had an estimation in terms of people who will be employed. I would have to look into this. I don't know off the top of my head. I know that the UCSD campus is proposing 1,000 housing units, and they're going to be a mix in for different types of family sizes, and that's to fit the demographics of people who work at their campus. So that is a really good point that you made about us having to consider the different types of family sizes and variety of housing that we would need to consider. Chuck, you had mentioned that you wanted to know about the Pernicano site, sorry. That's actually south of this area that we're focusing on today, but it will be covered in our topic for next month. So we can definitely discuss that when that comes up next month. I think considering sun and shade are things that we should include and consider in supplemental design regulations when those are developed, so we can ensure, good design of taller buildings. Carol, you had a comment about how we can guarantee affordability. All developments will be required to follow our inclusionary housing municipal code requirements, and if they are providing affordable housing through our affordable housing density bonus or complete communities, then they will be required through conditions in their permit to have a set up plan with the Housing Commission to do so. And then your comment about parks, I really appreciate it. I think that one of the things we do need to focus on is through design is how we can really connect better to Balboa Park, because that is such an asset to Hillcrest. So creating more walkable streets and even linear parks, or some of the things that Diego and I brought up earlier about how supplemental design regulations could lead to pocket parks and wider sidewalks. Those are ways that we can create a more active neighborhood and create creative and unique public spaces. So we can move on yeah.
All right, so let's go to board comments now. I see Lou. You're on mute. Lou, you're muted.
Sorry, I thought I'd unmuted. I wanted to say first, Roy, that I need to be leaving this meeting soon for another meeting. So I wanted you to know that for quorum and who can speak purposes in case it matters. And I wanted to thank the staff and consultants for their presentation. I do want to say something in general about that, which was I understand that the staff works to meet the mayor's objectives, and I just want to say we don't. That doesn't mean we're opposed to the mayor's objectives or what he says in the state of the city plan, but as a community, we need to be able to offer our own ideas about what works best in terms of deploying that in our community. And I think many of us feel that certain communities are kind of targeted, like you take care of business for that so that we can avoid dealing with it elsewhere. And I also want to say that I appreciate your comments, Shannon, about listening to comments in previous Plan Hillcrest meetings, but I'm not sure that you're characterizing by saying your generalizations about what the dominant mode is are necessarily reflective of all the views that have been expressed. When it comes to the issues tonight, albeit on the mobility option, again, we're sort of being presented with, you have 2 or 3 options, which we may or not think are particularly good options to begin with, but these are your options. So having no choice but to choose among them, on the mobility plan option, it seems if you want to have any kind of rapid transit answer, you must have those bus lanes be dedicated, not be mixed with regular traffic. And I'm not sure that cycling, also removing parking to have cycling as well as rapid transit bus lanes makes sense. Ideally, other streets can be more designated for the bicycle and then the rapid transit bus lanes there. The need for retail to have parking is just crucial. And other points that have been brought up with the plans for density here that are, again, the only 3 options we're being given, that make the point about the need for planning well in advance for open space for true affordability. And the current city guidelines are not sufficient for assuring that, are really, really critical, and other infrastructure needs and needs for sufficient retail of the appropriate types to support the kind of huge population growth you're talking about here. In terms of the 3 plans, it does seem like the third one controls the density a bit more, so that there still might be the potential for a different kind of mix of neighborhoods, types, and neighborhood feels. Thank you very much for, again, for your presentation and for listening, and for all the members of the public who are here as well.
All right, thanks, Lou. Brer, you're next.
Sorry about that. My mute button was obscured. Hi there. I just want to say thanks for this presentation. First of all, I appreciate its brevity, but also the quality of the graphics. And I think it really helps focus on the important issues when you can just kind of hone in on what's important. I'll start by just saying a few things about the transportation scenario without being specific to one version or the other. I really feel, I shouldn't say feel, I should say believe, that a complete street should be a defining concept for any neighborhood in San Diego, and that being presented with a choice between safe access for people on bicycles or pedestrians versus people in cars or buses is kind of a false choice, especially in a transit priority area, which Washington Street and most of Hillcrest is. I think if this is going to be a commercial corridor, which is what I've seen in your illustrations, and also considering, the employers, the hospitals, which there will be, 60, 70,000 people coming into the neighborhood to work and visit these places, that you need a fully holistic approach to the travel modes, not just for customers, but also for employees who are commuting or living nearby, but not necessarily in walking distance. So I think when you consider that, and also in the context of climate action and our transportation policy, it just makes sense to focus on all modes of travel equally, Sorry about that. I guess the easiest way to describe it is when I look at these images, I see the hierarchy of needs kind of flipped. It shouldn't be a priority for personal vehicles, parking, and travel. It should be prioritizing pedestrians, cyclists, and transit first, and then accommodating vehicles and off-street parking and, you know, lanes to use, but not be the priority mode. I also think about things I've seen regarding the potential for Washington Street Mobility Hub, and I think that lends to this. So I would just like to see a more comprehensive design and not just an either or choice, I guess is what I'm saying, in a long way. And also, you know, I'd really like the idea of urban roundabouts. I think there's potential in this neighborhood, particularly given the number of vehicles and emergency vehicles moving around. But I'll just say one thing about your building typologies. You were talking about sort of 5 and 6 story and then, you know, taller versions of that. And I just wanted to point it out that there are modern building technologies that are incoming and are becoming very real possibilities in San Diego that are using mass timber technology. And the sweet spot for that is around 8 to 10 stories, from what I understand. So I think that in your zoning designations, try and consider that that kind of middle zone that isn't technologically possible at the moment, but will be in the very near future. And also one more thing to consider, I'd really strongly recommend that you look at the concepts of the 15-minute city and try and maybe apply those concepts to this part of town and Hillcrest in general, because we really are, you almost can't walk from one end of the neighborhood to the other in 20 or 30 minutes. So I think that's my last comment on that. Thanks again. I really like the presentation.
All right, thanks. Mary, you're next.
Hi. Yeah, ditto. Thanks for the presentation. I didn't take good enough notes, so I'm not exactly clear what the colors mean. So if you could restate that when you answer these questions, that would be great. But I'm getting that the dark brown are the higher buildings and the light brown are the sort of lower density buildings. But my questions, I think it was Diego who talked about 5-story walk-ups. Understanding that a lot of these buildings that are going to be built are going to have, or they have decided to offer affordable housing. I don't think it's right to have 5-story walk-ups in brand new buildings. And I'm sorry if I'm incorrect about it, that you said that, Diego. But I think a 5-story building that's going to have affordable housing needs to be able to offer an elevator for folks who are disabled. The other question, another question, and this has come up before. I can't remember if it was Shannon or Diego, but mentioning high rise. What is the definition of a high rise building? I've gotten different answers from that, and so I would like clarification on that, if possible. And parking. Please do not forget the disabled when you're talking about parking. That's all I need to say about that, I think. So thank you again.
Thanks. Gail, you're next.
Yeah. Hi, thank you. I echo the other comments. I just wanted to add, somebody had a question about Pericanos and what's going on there. You can visit their construction office. It's on 6th, sort of on 6th and Robinson, and you can go in and see the mock-up of what is going to be built there. So I just wanted to pass that on. One of the things I have to say is that I really like where the housing is going. I think this is a great option for aging baby boomers, especially if you put in an elevator, especially with the proximity to 2 hospitals here. So people who are aging out of maybe their single family home, or want to have a closer proximity to these hospitals, I think this is a great option for them. So I would also echo having buildings with elevators. Somebody mentioned something about parks and open space, and I think there's not enough of rooftop open space in San Diego. They do it very well in Chicago, which has very bad weather. So I think keep that in mind. You could put a lot of open space on rooftops. And so I really like that option. If think about that. And then I also think the other, what you're talking about is the retail option underneath the building. When I was in Chicago, I lived in a high rise. We had a grocery store underneath, and it was so convenient. And so I think that's a really important option to also have. What else did I say? Rooftop. And then I echo the comments about safety in Washington. I think it's such an empty, desolate place right now. You don't want to walk there alone, especially when you get down to the end where the old library site used to be. That's just been sitting empty and hasn't attracted the best people. So I think it would be open up the retail, make it more vibrant, and with the housing would be a great option. So thank you.
Okay, Tom, you're next.
Yes, thank you. My first comment, I would like for the staff to, at some point, go back to the first the slide that shows the rail. The purple lines seems to be schematic where the light rail is going to go. I can't understand where the light rail is going to go. The second item, I'd like to say that the idea of meeting the housing needs through things like corner plazas is completely unrealistic. And I would like the staff to comment on the stated goal in the grant of adding 10 to 15,000 housing units. So for those people viewing who aren't aware, the staff got a grant from the state of California to fund the staff work and the consultants that we're seeing tonight. And one of the goals was to add 10 to 15,000 housing units. So I clearly would like some conversation about whether that may be excessive. That would be more people than live in the entire city of Coronado. The second part of that, my question for staff is to please comment on the idea of by right development. That same grant that this project is under says that the new housing's supposed to be done by right. Now, what that means is without public hearings, without any kind of hearing like we're having today, it's approved by a staff member downtown. So while we're talking about little details, I do want the staff to comment on the 10 to 15,000 housing units and the idea of by right approval where there are no public hearings. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Matt, you didn't have your hand raised. Did you have something you want to say on what's been presented?
Yeah, actually. Well, first I have a question as to why the chats are disabled. Are the chats disabled?
I thought they were disabled until now, but are
My
they enabled?
apologies. I'm multitasking. My sincere apologies. I'm going to enable it.
Okay. Thank you. Just bear with me for a little bit here because I want to go back because Chuck Kaminsky actually hit on something that is actually very pertinent and regarding the fact that the word gateway is echoing through everything that's going through here. I have submitted California Public Records Act requests from the city trying to find out about all of the different things that have been going on behind the Uptown Community Plan update and this plan Hillcrest. I'm gonna put it in the chat so you can see the first one was this one from back in 2016. Again, you don't have to look at everything now. I just want to make sure it's in the record there. Okay, there's the text of what the request was and looking for it. And then the takeaway, though, from that was that the HBA, in conjunction with the Gateway Group of private property owners, was the subcontractor on the city's unsuccessful Sustainable Communities State Grant application. So that all kind of, subsided a little bit. We thought everything was, kind of going to stay the way it is until we started this whole Plan Hillcrest process, we got the notice that from the city, ta-da, we're going to start doing this back in December 2019, January 2020 is when they finally sprang this on us. And what happened was, as per after what had happened, with that, as soon as that all came out and it was so clear that there was something really heavy happening behind the scenes, I submitted another Public Records Act request. Now, this one is not allowing me to paste. Copy. Is chat disabled again?
It should be, you should be allowed to. Let me double check it.
Can you start a new box?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, you should have ability to use the chat.
It may not let you paste a link to other things. I don't know.
Well, I just did a whole thing, a section of it that allowed me to, so I don't know why it's not now.
Okay.
I mean, I can't retype everything. That's what I would spend all that time preparing for. Okay, so one new message, what? Who's saying what? Okay. It's not even that it's that. Okay, well, let's try this. Okay, so in any event, so I did back on January 21st of last year, so almost a year to the day, I said, as part of the community plan update, the city council recommends staff consider blah, blah, blah. Okay, I did just break it up and you can see that there. So, and it requested all records regarding that. One of the things that shook loose was on a letter dated on June 7th, 2017. Jeff Murphy invited the Atlantis Group and or its clients to enter into a public-private partnership with the city to develop the Uptown Gateway specific plan. I'm including the links to that here, although that document doesn't seem to appear anymore. So I do have it saved, and I will have the chair share it. Again, this shows an undated memorandum of understanding with Gateway that in the adopted Land Use and Housing Committee map from October 2019 that has what we've been asking for and wondering all along. There's that one-page document that's the request at the end that just got released yesterday. It shows the map for that the Uptown, that the Gateway lobbying group proposed, and it is identical to the expanded border that we are all now having to consider under Plan Hillcrest. And so just by way of finishing up here, I had also followed up, and again, this is relevant to what Tom had said. I had requested the information when it was known that public money, taxpayer money, was applied for yet again to fund this project that is going to benefit developers. I got this download that shows that exactly what Tom is saying, that is to increase the existing plan from 10 to 15,000 housing units, that is supposed to work in conjunction with the hospitals. And so it's just more than a little curious that all of that this is been happening, and somehow, as I have been trying to make people aware that what is going to be happening, what is trying to be being done, is a foregone conclusion. So no matter they're taking the feedback on what we believe should be the best option for A, B, or C, 1, 2, or 3. but they are going to select the one that is the maximum density, the least affordable, because that is what is the requirements of the grant that funded them. And so,
thanks,
yes.
Matt. So you have that information, that link, so people can see those documents if they'd like to read them. Right?
Correct, and there's hundreds more.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Helen, did you want to say something? Since we have one of the members missing, we can allow you if you'd like. We don't hear you. Are you muted?
I'm not muted.
Okay, there you go.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having the opportunity to visit with this subject matter for several years since its inception, since the gestation of the city's plan Hillcrest, watching hundreds of slides and quickie surveys and complexity of presentation and mixed messages and 5 objectives, and the expanse of what Plan Hillcrest really involves, just the immensity of the geographical area. This is not finite, but almost infinite. It has impact. It's serious. It tends toward hyperdensity. I think that's quite obvious. And it involves red curbs, high-priced high-rises, an assault on urban forestry, and an extreme lack of livability. I would urge a reconsideration of the focus of the city. I hope that that comes to fruition. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. All right, I'll share some of my comments. So I was interested in seeing what you were going to be doing on Washington Street, because we know that there's only 3 streets east and west. So if you're doing a network analysis of our network for traveling from east to west, you either have to take Washington University or Robinson. And if you had taken out another 50% of the capacity on one of those things, it was not going to work. So clearly you felt that it was not possible, and it's clearly not possible from any traffic analysis point of view. Now, I know we're not supposed to care about traffic anymore, according to certain people, and it's only bikes and pedestrians and mass transit, but I still live in the real world, so I'm glad that you recognize that you still need 2 lanes in each direction on Washington. I still believe that University is a problem, and that the high speed, those lines should not be going down University. What they actually should be doing is either going down Park Boulevard, like they originally did in the previous plan, and or they could go over Washington, similar to the trolley line in the North County, where it actually is up above the street, and it connect to the transit center at the bottom of Washington. And then you would allow for all these people that are going to buy all these places in El Cajon Boulevard to actually be able to get to work in the North County or go to the left and go to the South County. So from a transportation point of view, so far what I've seen is a disaster from my own personal point of view. And because it's a disaster, it's hard to support reasonable growth until it's fixed. So that's my opinion. Thanks.
All right, thank you. We only have 11 minutes remaining in the meeting, and we do want to preview the online community engagement platform with you. So I will just spend a minute or less doing my best to respond and to answer questions, and also allow Gabriella and Diego and Claudia to do so as well. I'll try my best to be very succinct. Tom, you wanted me to speak to the 10 to 15 housing units as proposed in the grant. And yes, that's true. It's been stated before. And I just want to make it clear that that was a goal that we made, knowing that we would be going through this process to flesh out more details and to figure out what is realistic through analysis and also community involvement like you all are being a part of today. And I just want to mentioned, those opening slides that I made, that there is a huge gap between the population growth and the housing in Uptown. And we want to plan appropriate land uses for the transit infrastructure that's being planned by Sandag, and to really plan for the future 30 years from now. And, these units, although goal, right, and we don't know yet what we will actually achieve through Plan Hillcrest, but whatever is decided through this process won't be built overnight. It will take many years to come to fruition. Gabriella or Diego or Claudia, do you want to answer or address anyone's comments before we move into the online community engagement platform?
Yeah, just one quick thing, just a clarification on the walk-up. When I mentioned walk-up residential, it was in addition to elevators. If you have a 5-story building, the building code requires an elevator per the American with Disabilities Act. So it's not one or the other. I think it's the idea of having both, so that people, if they are choosing to walk to and from the grocery store, to different areas of the community, that they can walk up into their unit if their residential unit is on the street. But yeah, certainly not in place of elevators.
All right, let's move on and spend the next 8 minutes doing a quick preview of the online community engagement platform. And that is the wrong slide. Okay, so Gabriella and I would like to briefly walk you through this online community engagement platform, which will be a way that we can reach, all your neighbors that don't have the time to join us every month in these meetings, so that they can provide their input. It will be interactive and will present current land use, public realm, and mobility options that our team, with all of your help, has been working on to develop and to collect the community's feedback on preferred options for each of the topics. We plan to launch this platform in the next month or two, and we'll be coming back to y'all with another overview at our next meeting, because we really will be relying on you all to promote this through your connections in the community. Gabriella?
Great, you can go to the next slide. So the online tool will really focus on the same topics that we've been focusing on with the CPG and the community over the past year. So we'll again discuss the goals and the principles and gather opinions of the overall strategy for Plan Hillcrest. Next slide. We'll also give an overview of public realm and some public realm considerations. Next slide. We'll focus in on the three sub areas and give an overview of the 3 sub areas for anyone who hasn't been fully involved in the process. That'll just be a brief overview, and then we'll zoom into each of the sub areas similar to what we've been doing at each of the meetings, and we'll discuss housing possibilities, retail, ground floor, supplemental standards, etc. And then we will also get into how mobility options for each of the sub areas. So really looking, we don't have much time left, but if anyone has any general feedback of the online engagement tool, that would be great.
All right, we'll start with the community non-board members. Sanjay?
Yeah, hey, yeah, I think it's great that we're doing this. I think it's important. Want to say I know Sandag's regional plan, they had a map that allowed you to pinpoint areas especially for walking and pedestrian, because I know there's a lot of issues with like First Avenue and various areas on University and Washington that are problem areas. And I think that would help provide feedback from the community on what areas that we can focus on to improve mobility. To Roy's point of we need to make sure we have that, and to Brer's point as well of building complete streets. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other members of the public would like to say anything on this? Not seeing anyone, we'll go to the board. Matt, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just want to know what kind of tech quality control is being used on this survey. Is there some kind of tracking to make sure like there's no duplication of someone to spam what's submissions? What kind of quality control is being used on this platform?
Shannon, did you want me to answer the
You
question?
can answer, yes.
Oh, sure. So we can track, I believe, the computer that it's coming from, but also what we've done in the past is just tracked if there's repetitive words being used. So there are some tactics we can use to track if the same person is taking the survey over and over again. Does that answer your question, Matt?
It provides a answer. Yes, thank you.
Okay, other board members that had something to say. Raise your hand, do your hand thing if you want to speak, because I don't otherwise see it. Oh, we have a member of the public that missed their opportunity. I'll let them take a quick, since we have 3 minutes still. Patty, do you want to say something?
Yes, I really would like to find out what kind of numbers we're talking about from the two hospitals, Scripps and UCSD, and then also to really consider the composition, families, individuals, singles. It really needs to be taken added to the configuration. Plus, as it's already been mentioned, I think the whole mobility and transportation needs to be much more better detailed because it's very vague. It's lines and configurations, but not really detailed information that really explains what you're talking about.
Thank you. My comments on your survey is it feels a little overly controlled and directed, that you're getting the feedback that you're looking for, that you might want to try and think of how it could be more open to additional options, et cetera. That's my only comment from what I saw. Thanks. All right. I think we've come.
Yeah, why don't I just quickly just remind everyone our next meeting is on February 17th, and our topic will be on land use and building form again, but we will focus on Hillcrest West. So the section of the community south of Washington Street and west of the 163. And other than that, I just want to say thank you to everyone for their feedback. I know there was a lot said, and also I'm seeing people's comments in the chat, and I'll be putting my email in the chat if anyone wants to follow up with me through email on any of their questions as well.
All right, thanks everyone for being limited to these Zoom meeting formats. I thought we at least got through a lot of material tonight. So thank everyone for their for trying to get their comments to the point. And we'll see you next month on this.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Roy.